Alrighty, guys, we are going to talk about the two rivals. To pretty much wrap up our Big Ten series, we did Nebraska, we talked about Oregon, and Oregon I see as a playoff team. I don't see Nebraska as a playoff team. I actually have Minnesota power ranked higher than Nebraska. That game is going to be sensational in Minnesota. So overall, pretty interesting Big Ten. Right? You still have Washington that's out there. The Trojans of USC are really getting slept on. But we're going to talk a little bit about Michigan. All right? That's what we're going to do to really start off this show. And then we're going to talk about Ohio State a little bit. But I'll talk about Michigan first. I got to tell you, Sharon Moore, what a phenomenal job he did at the end of last year. I mean, they narrowly lose to Indiana. Then they go out there and they beat Ohio State, and then they beat Alabama in the bowl game. You might scoff at the bowl game in Florida, but they made Jalen Milroe look like a Canadian Football League quarterback. That's how much that defense dominated. I wasn't a fan at all. I'll be honest. I'll admit this on the show. I was not a fan of Don Wink Martindale going to college football at all. I looked at Wink and I said, old, kind of stubborn NFL defensive coordinator that blitzes all the time, that might not pivot, that is he going to relate to the college game, recruiting, all of that stuff. They really got their act together last year at Michigan. Now, the offense, which Sharon Moore is an offensive line guy from Oklahoma originally, that offense was really, really poor. They had terrible quarterback play. Davis Warren's a great story, not a good quarterback. Alex Orji is now not reuniting. He's now with Dan Mullen, and I don't even know if he's going to win the starting job out in Vegas. So, but I want to see Alex Orji play football. He's a high character guy, but throwing the football was not a strong suit for Alex Orji in the year 2024. Now, maybe in the year 2025 it will be, but that was painful to watch Michigan play football. But now USC had a quarterback in Miller Moss that was also an overrated player, and he ends up transferring. Okay, he had one good game against LSU, and then at Michigan actually beat USC last year. So Michigan was able to beat Ohio State. They were able to beat USC. All right, so they had themselves a really, for Sharon Moore, replacing JJ, replacing Blake Corum, replacing all of the talent that was on that club. I think Mikey Samerstill, who plays for the Redskins, like they have a lot of cornerbacks that are out there that, they have a lot of guys that are playing football in the NFL, all right, that they had to replace with Jim Harbaugh. So, again, I'm a fan of the Michigan Wolverines, all right? I mean, am I a fan of Michigan? Not really. But do I like Sharon Moore and the way that he got his season together? Yes. Okay, Dave Portnoy's putting in a lot of money into Michigan football, all right? And that is going to be intriguing. So, Michigan, let's look at this season. Let's look at Don Wink Martindale. Let's really analyze their roster. It was a lost year last year with a terrible quarterback play. First year of Sharon Moore, stepping into a really pressure cooker of a job. You look, really, Jim Harbaugh didn't get his act together until year 7 at Michigan. Rich Rod was abysmal at Michigan, and so was Brady Hoke. So this is a tough job. Most of the coaches don't pan out at Michigan if we look back at recent history. But you got a freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood, who's from Bellevue, Michigan. 6'4". He has the arm. I've seen some video of Bryce Underwood. I think he's going to be a very, very exciting player. I cannot wait to watch this offense. In terms of wide receiver, I really don't see a lot of returning production that I'm that excited about. Maybe I'm out of the loop completely on Michigan football and with their wide receivers. They got Justice Haynes, though, from Alabama. Really talented player, really fast, really quick. And Jordan Marshall is also going to be a returner for Michigan. Defensively, looking at this football team, I am excited again because, you got Rod Moore as a safety. You got Metcalf back there, Jair Hill. Like, these are guys that I've heard about that are pretty good football players. I'm excited to watch Michigan more this year. All right, let's analyze their upcoming schedule. You start out with New Mexico. I think New Mexico's breaking in a new offensive coordinator, probably a new coaching staff as Devin Dampier is headed to Utah. All right, so that's going to be a game in which Michigan is going to absolutely roll against New Mexico. Then they play Oklahoma. It's a homecoming game for Sharon Moore. ABC, prime time, John Mateer versus Bryce Underwood. This is going to be unbelievably exciting. A lot of pressure on Brent Venables. I cannot wait. This will be a slugfest. This will be physical. The under will definitely occur. Brent Venables will be able to defend, I think, against a freshman quarterback and maybe against Chip Lindsey. Then they come home and they play Central Michigan, and then they go to Nebraska. So I might even have them beating Oklahoma and losing to Nebraska. All right, so overall in this schedule, you want to be 3-1. You want to get either Oklahoma or Nebraska. Then you have Wisconsin out of the break, okay? We'll win that game. Then you go to USC. So this schedule is brutal to start off the year. They're going to lose to USC. They have Washington at home, at Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland, and the Buckeyes. So you're probably looking at 8-4. Unfortunately, I don't know if I see a 10-win year in here if you're Michigan. All right, Nebraska's probably going to pick you off. USC's going to get you. I don't know about Ohio State. You're probably going to lose somewhere else. I mean, you have a freshman quarterback. Could you lose to Sparty? It's possible. Could you go to Maryland and really play a terrible game and lose to those guys? It's possible. Freshman quarterback, inconsistent team. It's going to be an 8-4. You want to get to 9-3 though if you are Michigan. Let's look at Ohio State. Let's look at the Buckeyes. Let's look at their schedule. Again, I am not high on Ohio State. I don't believe in Julian Sayin at quarterback. I don't really believe in these coordinator hires. I don't believe in Matt Patricia at all. All right, he wasn't that good in the NFL as a head coach. Even as a coordinator with Philly, he's a really nice guy, but I have question marks about him. He's having to replace Jim Knowles, and then offensive coordinator-wise, they're going back to the wide receiver coach, Hartline. And Hartline was kind of replaced a couple of years ago. So very underwhelming hires. The quarterback there, Julian Sayin, I don't really buy that much. I didn't have him viewed that highly out of high school in Cal. I think he's on the smaller side. I think that, again, he's only 6 feet, 6'1". He's not overly dynamic running the football, and he doesn't really attack you deep down the field. He doesn't hunt big plays. So he's a little bit like Jackson Arnold. I actually see Tavion St. Clair as the much better quarterback for the long run at Ohio State University. All right? So looking at Ohio State, let's look at the schedule. They play Texas week 1. That's going to be a tough game. I think Texas will get them week 1. Then they have Grambling and Ohio. So not a real good schedule. Not a real, not a real tough schedule outside of Texas. They go to Washington. They have Minnesota at home. And then they go to Illinois and at Wisconsin. They're going to lose maybe 2 out of these 3. They're going to lose to Washington or Minnesota or Illinois. They're only going to win one of those games, okay? And then they go to Madison. Could be a little bit tricky. Penn State comes in, okay, to their house after a bye week. Could they maybe get up and win that game? Possibly. They also play Michigan. So I see an 8-4 year actually at Ohio State. I see them losing to Texas. I see them losing, maybe maybe Minnesota, maybe at Illinois. I see this being a real come-down season for Ryan Day. And then Ryan Day has to go to Michigan, and if they don't beat Michigan and he goes 8-4 or 7-5, like then you get a little bit of hot seat conversation, not for this year, but then he's squarely on the hot seat in about 2 years. So I think Ryan Day really, I'm very interested to see in this season. You're really going to find out about the worth of Ryan Day. Like, can he finally beat Michigan? All right, is he going to get into the college football playoff? Is Ohio State even going to get into the dance this year with, Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith? Like, they have so much talent. Sonny Styles. They have so much talent on this team, but I think this team's really poorly put together. I think that a lot of these hires are not very good. So I'm really questioning Ryan Day. He brought in Chip Kelly, and then they go out and they lose Jim Knowles. That's on Ryan Day. Ryan Day is the architect of Ohio State football. You put in all this money in the last year's roster, and I couldn't be more down on Ohio State. I think Michigan is building with a young quarterback. I think they're building with defense. I think Michigan is ascending, and I think that Ohio State is coming down. And guess what? I think Ohio State has even more resources than Michigan does in football. I do. But Ryan Day right now is on the verge of getting lapped by a young Sharon Moore. And that's where I see it happen. I see a changing of the guards where Ohio State, they got into the tournament last year. They had a great end of the year. They won the national championship. But I see that that's the peak for Ohio State. I don't see them sustaining. You look at the great programs in college football, even Kirby Smart last year, when they had a backup quarterback and they couldn't run the ball for anything. They won the SEC championship. You look at Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning doesn't dip at all. And we're going to see. Is Ryan Day going to stay ahead of Dan Lanning in Oregon, or is Ryan Day going to fade back to the middle of the pack? Is Ryan Day a one-hit wonder at Ohio State in terms of winning a national championship? That will be the conversation that we have on this show this year.